So I've written British Doubt, Rockets and Stuff. What's happening in the garage, James?
Not much at the moment, Sean. Everything's back to normal after the petrol nightmare. I'm just looking across now. It's a very rainy night here in Dorset. And
it is here as well.
Quiet scenes.
I was just about to go, and then it thundered down with rain. I was like, oh shit, I'm going to have to move everything downstairs. And then it stopped.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping it's not going to start again. It's going to be so loud.
I don't think anyone will mind, Cleves, if they hear a bit
atmospheric.
Yeah, I think it will be. You could start reading a ghostly story if it starts raining again.
Tiny meteorites.
Hey. Very good.
Right, let's do the podcast, baby.
Yeah, start the podcast.
Immediately.
Fire up the podcast, please.
Britain. An ancient kingdom with legends of violence, cruelty, and torment in its blood. Join your hosts, Ross, John, and James, as they bravely tread where few would dare. Witness their journey into the horrific history of British horror. They are the General Witchfinders.
Ladies and gentlemen, goblins and ghouls, welcome back to the 17th episode of the General Witchfinders podcast. I'm James in Bournemouth in southern England.
I am John Pountney, and I'm in South Wales, which is in the south of Wales.
And I am Ross in Dorchester, southern England. And today we will cover Quatermass 2, aka Enemy from Space.
Yes.
Sort of whistling. I was right, they're coming down by the hundreds. Get Hall.
Listen very carefully. If you ever hear a sound like this, run for your life. Run before it is too late, for if you stay, you will lose your soul. Coming closer is an enemy from outer space. From out of this world it came. A horrifying terror that threatened mankind, haunting and possessing every human being within range, an indestructible danger beyond all earthly understanding.
Vincent Broadhead is dead. Dead? I watched him die a few hours ago in that plant. His whole body covered with some kind of corrosive poisoning, eaten away.
It poisoned everything it touched. The mind and the body of man was no longer in his control. They ran from this unknown menace, but there was no escape.
We're holding this block. We've got to, at least until the oxygen takes effect.
What's in those domes, mister?
Resistance must cease immediately. Lay down your
Yes, what is it? Tell us. Inside those domes are creatures from outside this earth.
Are you mad?
I've seen them. Thousands of tiny creatures that can join together and expand into things 100 feet high.
Quatermass 2, aka Enemy from Space in the United States and Canada, is a 1957 black and white British science fiction horror film from Hammer Film Productions, directed by Val Guest, that stars Brian Dunleavy, John Longdon, Sidney James, aka Sid James, Brian Forbes, Vera Day, and William Franklin.
Vera Lynn.
Quatermass 2 is a sequel to Hammer's earlier film, The Quatermass Experiment. Like its predecessor, it is based on the BBC television serial Quatermass 2, written by Nigel Kneale, big favourite of the podcast. Brian Dunleavy reprises his role as the eponymous Professor Bernard Quatermass, making him the only actor to play the character twice in a film. It's considered as the first film sequel to use the 2/II suffix within the title. The film's storyline concerns Quatermass's investigation of reports of hundreds of meteorites landing only in the Winardine Flats area of the UK. His inquiries lead him to a huge industrial complex, strikingly similar to his own plans for a moon colony. This top-secret facility is in fact the centre of a conspiracy involving the alien infiltration of the highest echelons of the British government. Quatermass and his allies must now do whatever is necessary to defeat the alien threat before it is too late. The first Quatermass film had been a major success for Hammer, and eager for a sequel, they purchased the rights to Nigel Kneale's follow-up for before the BBC had even begun transmission of the new serial. For this adaptation, Nigel Kneale himself was allowed to write the first draft of the screenplay, although subsequent drafts were worked on by director Val Guest, who directed the first Hammer Quatermass. Ross has put too many S's there, so it says Quatermass. Let's go. It sounds like I'm drunk.
Quatermass.
Guest once again employed many cinema verite techniques to present the fantastical elements of the plot with the greatest degree of realism. Nigel Kneale was critical of the final film, mainly on the account of the return of Brian Donlevy in the lead role. Kneale was unhappy with Donlevy's interpretation of the character, and also claimed that the actor's performance was marred by his alcoholism.
Yeah. All great facts.
Oh, I know, it's so fun. Right. Although Quatermass 2 was financially successful, its box office performance was eclipsed by the massive success of another Hammer film, and subject of an earlier General Witchfinder's The Curse of Frankenstein, which was the first of their many gothic horror films. As a result, it would be 10 years before Hammer adapted the next Quatermass serial for the cinema, with Quatermass in the Pit in 1967. Supposedly, Quatermass was originally shot in Answer colour, developed by Agfa, but released in black and white, and it's said that the colour negatives still exist in the archives.
Well, I've never heard that before.
Although this could be a weird online hoax.
Yeah, I found a couple of websites who say this, but the pictures they show look really badly coloured, and then they go on to say that there's a version of it where the girl in the bar was topless, and it was only shown in Germany, and it looks like a still from another film for me.
This sounds like bollocks to me.
Yeah, exactly. But you feel like why make
unless
this
you
up?
shot it twice, all you to do is shoot it in colour and then have to turn it into black and white from colour negatives.
Well, apparently, which
no one would do.
What I read said that the Answer film was really crap. It was like the Nazis' version of colour film, which they developed to try and make better propaganda films, and all the faces come out purple and stuff. But it was really cheap. Bollocks. But I don't believe it's true.
No, the German colour films were the best in the world in the 30s. They didn't do anything badly, the Nazis, really, did they? Let's face it. I was about to
say, Brer Nazi didn't muck about with science too much, did
when
they?
You say they badly, it all depends, your definition of...
Well, it's relative, isn't it? I mean, they built the best tanks. If they were like, we want a tank, they built the best tank. They weren't shoddy with their tanks, etc.
Okay. Controversial.
The big thing for me that I wanted to say was what I'm really enjoying about this, and it was exactly the same with The Earth Dies Screaming, is it's an amazing kind of like snapshot into what like life in Britain post-war.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And I said, as I put on there, excitedly, Hemel Hempstead, Newtown.
Yeah.
Because they've all kind of tied it into like the building of like places like Hemel Hempstead, in kind of post-war Britain. And there's this amazing sense of kind of like changing of time. That's what I really loved about it. This whole kind of like 1950s white heat of science vibe to it. But at the same time as well, this whole kind of like the old way of like old English villages are going. And then, oh, look, we're filming here on this, genuinely, you can see. And I thought, that'd be a fun thing to do, would be to go to Hemel Hempstead and see if you could figure out
I'd love to
some
do
of the
that.
places.
Yes.
Well, that'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
And also the idea that the UK may actually have some kind of space program as well.
Yeah. More on that in a minute as well.
It's very optimistic. The pretext is optimistic, but it's actually a very negative film, really, isn't it? Because it's But James, you've hit the nail on the head there with Nigel Kneale. Like everything that he's about is the old being hidden and kind of veneered over by the new. And that's obviously the stone tape. That's the kind of pretext of the stone tape, isn't it?
But I was listening this morning, I was listening to the radio and I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if, and I reckon that, you might be able to do this in the future, that you could just like go to a website. You
could see pictures on the radio.
Oh,
Is that what you thought?
No, I thought it'd be great if I could I thought I would like to just listen to what, like live radio, as it were, from like the past. So I like to listen to, and then I thought, I can get Ready for Extra on here, so I don't have to listen to the Today program. So I put it on to, and I was listening to Handcast Half Hour this morning.
Amazing.
And I was just thinking...
Another Sid James link.
Yeah, exactly. And also, people laugh differently back then. And it's just amazing, like, within a couple of generations, even the way people sound when they laugh and the way people talk is completely different. You think, as much as you think things stay the same, they just change so quickly. Everything about people's lives. And I think this was a particular time, like you said, James, in British history where so much was changing. And you can see that, but it probably was quite frightening for people.
Management of that change was attempted, wasn't it? So the government at that point still tried to build new houses, build motorways,
level up.
Like people had power and gas, they had food, and it's like this is the modern thing now, is that the government kind of seems to shrug responsibility for all of the things that governments are meant to do. Which is...
Well, they just say let the free market do it, and then... And then everyone's gas supplies disappear overnight.
Let the free market do it, then there's no petrol, there's no sandwiches, there's no bread. There's... is that the rain?
Here comes the rain. So, sorry, listeners, it's very rainy.
Atmospheric.
Yeah.
It's atmospheric, so we like it.
Like I said earlier, these are tiny meteorites landing in Dorchester. Yeah. Near Poundbury, the new town of Poundbury.
The film starts with some youngsters, as he calls them later, even though they look about 50, out for a jaunt in a car in some very unconvincing, really, night for day footage of like an old MG. Oh my God, hell just scared the shit out of me then. Creeping around like a fucking creeping Jesus.
Where's the creeping Jesus? That's something my mum talks about as well.
It was Jesus creeping, isn't it?
Why did he creep?
Romans. Trying to avoid the Romans, man.
So,
ask an RE teacher.
She's driving a little roadster. A guy is in the passenger seat. He looks like Cleaver.
He does.
When he's had a few pints of cider too many. He tries to steer the car a bit like Cleaver would probably try and do as well. And then they fall out
Only
the
would
car.
you be driving as fast as that woman, John?
With no headlights on. Did they nearly hit Quatermass?
Yeah, they forced Quatermass off the road.
Yeah, in his lovely, I think it's a Singer kind of estate. So it's a Roots Group company of motor car, and I think it's a Singer. Or it might be a Sunbeam. I can't remember which it is, but it's like an estate car.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, have a look, Cleves. So yeah, built in Coventry, probably. The great British bastion of car manufacturing in the 50s. So he gets out, and it transpires that this guy has been hit by fragments of a rock or something, and he's got this mark on his face. And then straight away, pretty much, we're straight into a title sequence and then into the story.
Yeah, I was going to say, nice cold open. And I imagine that would have been 2 episodes of the TV version.
Yeah. I think this film is brilliant, firstly, because there's so much plot and it rattles through. I think it's like an hour and 20 minutes or something.
It's extremely ambitious.
It's
massively ambitious.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Quatermass drives a Mark 6 Humber Hawk estate car.
Well, that's still a Roots Group car, and it might have been badge engineered, so they might also have featured as a Singer or as a Hillman. So your base model would be a Hillman. That would be the cheapest trim. And then your trim would go up to the Humber, and the Humber would be the posh one.
There you go.
So famously, you would have the Humber Super Snipe, which was like the 3-litre, like Executive Express. So you go now to some very nice matte paintings and some nice model shots of a rocket, and you've got a satellite dish, and then you've got a nice big airy set of their, like, a Bauhaus-inspired kind of rocket group headquarters.
Yeah, and Quatermass marches in, acts like a complete dick to everyone straight away.
Well, I've put, now, because I hadn't seen the original Quatermass, I've since read up about it, and I'm intrigued to watch it now. And and one of the things that came across was, one of the striking things is that, his whole attitude in the original film is like, this, like the astronauts die, and the other one gets turned into like a space monster, basically on because of his mission. And like at the end of the movie, he's just like, well, I'm just going to send some more people up into space now. And it's very like lackadaisical about it. Like, fuck it, let's go. And like, I was like, okay, interesting. Yes. But what I thought was, they don't really explain in this one that he's an American. So I've put that, like Jimi Hendrix and Blondie, he's come to the UK to make his name.
Is he? I didn't realise that.
He's an American, Ross.
Well, I've just been watching. I've been watching Quatermass 4 tonight, and with John Mills. He's not American in that, is he?
No.
The proper Quatermass is British. He was named after Bernard Lovell, who created and designed Jodrell Bank. What do you call it? Dish or kind of relay station or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the second name he found at random in the phone book. Quatermass, he went through the phone book and found that name. But in the first two films, he's British, and Hammer had this ploy at the time of bringing in an American B-movie star and making them so it was a bit of a box office draw.
Yeah.
So his performance as Quatermass is very different to all the other Quatermai.
And so as Ross says, he turns up at his kind of UFO research station. And what we're told is he's just spent the day in Westminster, and what I've just put is bloody bean counters. But, poor Britain, absolutely crippled post World War II.
Yeah, the Marshall Plan.
Exactly. Everyone's still on rationing, and he's like, they won't let me build my moon base.
Yes.
It's like, well, duh.
Yeah, we got a nice model out of it. I just love a good model.
The exposition in that part just rattles through, and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah, he flies all over the place. He has a go at them, then he apologises, and it's just like,
Then he mentions reusable rockets about 30 years before the space shuttle.
Yeah.
He talks about Man on the Moon Project. Then he shows William Franklin, who is one of our heroes from Satanic Rites of Dracula.
Yes.
He's the guy in Satanic Rites of Dracula who's always got his shirt open to the navel. If you remember from that. Very masculine lead. Not quite as masculine in this. I think he got...
Johnny Acula?
No. Satanic Rites of Dracula.
I get mixed up with
Dracula. The one you didn't like, Ross.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So the one that was grey, it was boring. London looked really dirty.
Forgot it.
So he's like the chief of the Secret Service in that. You remember now?
No.
Right, anyway. So he just rattles through all this stuff, doesn't he? Rocket group, atomic bomb, atomic-powered reusable space rocket, a colony on the moon.
Their rocket, if they launch it, it will blow up.
Blow up.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
There, and they're like, this thing's a death trap.
It's not quite right, is it? But he has missed, or hasn't been told at this point, that Brand and Marsh, are they called, have been following, scanning meteorites falling that night. Surprise, surprise, and by a great coincidence, just where he has been some hours earlier.
Yeah.
So this is how we literally like parachute straight into the action, don't we? And that is very, very nice to behold. But it's not done in a way which is too... it doesn't feel rushed, really, and none of it feels unrealistic. It just feels very kind of well structured.
No, you don't. It doesn't stop long enough for you to question it and think.
No, compared to something like Extra, where
oh man, just even mentioning it, just don't feel a bit unwell.
I still don't think that we actually watched that film. I still think we had some kind of trick.
Mass hallucination.
Yeah. Maybe it stopped at the part where he does
the 2001
Space Odyssey, and then we all saw something different.
I reckon maybe it does feel like a description of some kind of like alien abduction regression thing. Maybe we all had lost time and we were being probed, and that's what they put people into our head.
Well, Ross,
right.
I remember you reading Communion by Whitley Strieber when we were at school, Ross.
Yeah,
so
very
I think
scared of that book. Very scared.
Very scared of the book. What did the book do, Cleve? Is it like got up and started creeping around?
It was a case of like, I really, really wanted to read it, but I was also terrified of it, and I was worried that it was going to unlock some regressed memory within me. And I woke up in the night after reading it, and I could hear this like noise, and there was
your own bowels.
and there was this flashing orange light outside the house, and I can remember just like laying there, just sweating, and then eventually got up and looked out the window to see what it was, and it was a road sweeper, because someone had smashed the window in the bus shelter outside the house, and it was.
Back to Blighty.
From that bit, there's one, as I said, they start to put together like, well, what's going on? And Quatermass says, well, I ran into these two young kids, and he says he had this. And even though it does just look like a rock, they're all very convinced that it is, some kind of
And
kind of miniature rocket.
Well, he said, go and reconstruct what this looked like before it came.
That's the bit. He says, I want you, and I've written it down, make a reconstruction of the shape of this thing before it hits the Earth's atmosphere. Right, the scientist goes, yeah, sure, like I'm on it. And I've written down, hang on, mate, we've literally only just got indoor toilets in this country. It's like, what are you expecting him to do?
It's the fucking radio telescope. We can't do this sort of stuff here.
But the scientist is like, yeah, sure, I'll get on it.
What I love is the kind of unwavering championing of scientists in this film, and the fact that at this point it was thought that scientists can do anything.
Exactly, yeah.
Solve anything.
So in the 50s and 60s, a scientist was a scientist of all things. In the 80s, computers did everything. You could control street lights with your computer. You can control weather satellites. You didn't even have to plug it into a phone line. So basically, science was magic in the 50s. Computers were magic in the 80s.
I don't know if they were magic. They were just right. Whereas now, a man with 3 teeth who sits in a bus shelter and reads things like that he sees on the floor is probably acknowledged as being more of an expert on viruses than the chief health officer of Britain now.
Because you always have to have someone who's got the opposite opinion, given the same amount of time and credibility.
Yeah. Opposite opinions to facts.
Yeah.
True. And speaking of such things, we'll get onto it in a bit, but as John is absolutely right, I agree with him that like science was like, science, yes. Scientists will be absolutely on this one. And the other thing, and especially from this era as well, is politicians are to be entirely trusted and know what's best for all of us.
Yeah.
Because without boring everyone's tears too much, I do a thing where, in part of my job when I'm teaching is I have to tell kids about like when we got rid of the death penalty in this country and why we don't have it anymore. And one of the things they said was it was passed as a kind of private member's bill in the 1960s. And the historian Dominic Sandbrook is on a documentary that I show them. And he just said this, like, if you would have tried to do this now, it never would have got through. Like back in the 1960s, there was this feeling that MPs are betters. And they're doing everything, for us entirely. And he's like, there's no way you could do that now. And I thought that as I was watching this film, it was just like the MP is portrayed as, don't worry, we'll get to the bottom of this. Where you're like, the MP's probably being like paid off. That's probably what we'd be thinking now. It's like he's probably getting like a big alien payday for, kind of keeping quiet about things.
This is an era where you didn't or don't question politicians being right, and that's what makes the film work. It's because the politicians are baddies and they are the enemy within, and they are, this predates it doesn't predate communism, but it really kind of predates the peak of the Cold War and stuff. And I think that's why it works. It's because, you have all this British kind of stiff upper lip stuff.
It's kind of like a British Body Snatchers, isn't it?
Because,
Body Snatchers was a metaphor for
that was communism as well, wasn't it? Yeah. So it's all about colonization, colonialism. This film and the horror of invasion. But I think what makes it interesting is that it's rather than told from the natives' point of view, and at that point I'm doing inverted commas, this is actually told from the British point of view, which is quite unusual in the 50s. Almost unheard of, actually, to almost think that colonialism or colonialization is wrong. A moth just flew into my hair.
I was listening to there's a really good podcast I listen to called Sophomore Lit, where basically they get people to go back and read the books which they were assigned at school and then reassess them. And I was listening to the War of the Worlds one, and they was talking about saying that at that point when that was written, basically Britain had colonized the whole of the world pretty much.
Yeah.
And they were the main big power. But then they said there was a lot of invasion novels written at that point where another country would come and invade England. And this is one of the first ones where War of the Worlds, one of the first ones, and they turned it into like an extraterrestrial invasion. But they said there was a lot of fear in England at that point. It's like, well, we are now the biggest, most powerful thing on empire on the planet. What if there was someone bigger and stronger than us? You know, there was a lot of kind of like pent up fear about that kind of thing, and I thought that was really quite interesting.
Well, this is just the point when I can't think when the Suez Crisis was, but this is around the time of the Suez Crisis, isn't it? It was that 56. So that's when Britain is literally just maybe waking up to the fact that they haven't got a clue what they're doing anymore, and America and Russia have just like flown ahead, basically.
Yes. You're quite right, John. 1956.
Yeah, and I think that's another. There's so many aspects to this film that you can just pinpoint, really, and that's why I think it is such a really interesting piece of science fiction writing. And to put this even anywhere near the same genre as Extro or Hellraiser, you just think, oh my God. Like,
we see one of the very few women in this film getting quite upset that she hasn't got a coffee ready for the scientists who are going to be coming in at some point. When Quatermass comes back to work in the morning.
And they decide that they're going to go and investigate further.
Yes.
They're going to go and say, can we find some more rocks?
Are we going to go to Winnerden Flats?
Yeah,
Winnerden
exactly.
Flats. So I can't tell if it's Winterden or Winnerden. I've no idea, but it's wherever they go, they go.
Winnerden, Winnerden.
Oh, it is.
Winnerden.
I thought it was Winterden.
Ivanhoe Beacon along, the ruin sound of Winnerden Flats is at Ivanhoe Beacon along the Ridgeway near the village of Ivanhoe in Buckinghamshire.
That's not too far away from where my sister lived for a while.
Okay.
When she lived
It's a real place, is it?
It's owned and protected by the National Trust.
Oh, interesting. So they get there, and then this is where I start to get really interested in this film, because it deals with so many things that I love. They're driving round, and they're driving through these kind of weird anonymous bits of landscape on these big kind of new roads that are being put in, and then I can't remember the kind of sequences, but they come to a road which stops.
Yes.
So some signs are there saying don't go any further, and they've got this really excellent kind of British fascist kind of symbol on them, haven't they?
Yes.
Which I was like, yes, this is great. And then they turn around and drive off. As they turn around and drive off, the foreboding music comes out, or something like that.
Yeah,
the music's brilliant in this. And then some soldiers come out of the bushes, and they've got these weird hats and
helmets,
gas masks and stuff on. Yeah.
I got a moth attacking me now, John.
Oh, this is weird.
Yeah.
Zach Bagans.
Well, I watched an episode of Zach the other night where a moth was summoned and kept flying through flames, and it didn't catch fire.
The Mothman prophecies.
They're going through a process of exploration, and they go across this kind of ridgeway, and then they look down, and he's like, I can't believe it. The Moon Project. And then it's a brilliant vista where you see the model that he's designed is being built in this landscape. And straight away, I'm just like, this is an amazing idea. This is such a brilliant idea.
But they've stolen his
idea.
Though,
That's what the whole film is about, Ross.
But they don't say that they are building a moon base on Earth.
They're building a base which will allow creatures to live on an alien planet.
But
that is what they say later. That's the dialogue.
But it turns into like some kind of like vat to build giant kaiju.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's exactly, that's the point,
But that's not what Quatermass has made it for.
No, I think you've been quite specific there, Ross.
Okay, well, yeah, one moon base can be just correct, yeah.
And also, I did think, like, if it was being made now with modern eyes, because obviously it's that thing of he's gone and pitched the moon base to the politicians, some of whom are the aliens, take over the thing styly, and they've looked at that idea and gone, brilliant, we'll nick that.
We'll have that.
And that's how I read it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I thought the way like Quatermass just kind of like goes, oh, that's my face. And he's a bit befuddled by it for about 30 seconds and just lets it go for ages.
Like, I think that has got more to do with Brian Donlevy being steaming and not a very good actor.
That's my base. Is that my base?
Yeah, reading the notes, apparently he would stumble onto set, say, what film is this? And then try and read all his lines off a board.
Yeah.
And then try and cop off with one of the guys.
I've always thought you've had a very lucky face.
So I think that is a brilliant twist. Which you see right at the start. I presume that was probably a cliffhanger or something in the TV series. But I think at this point, that's a brilliant twist already at the start of the film where he's had this idea. He's been told, no, thanks. And then he goes somewhere, looks, and he sees it, and everything he's done has been ripped off. I think it's a brilliant idea. Then, unfortunately, his friend Marsh, who was played by Brian Forbes, and Brian Forbes, we need to just Google Brian Forbes because he's an interesting guy.
Okay, I've got it here.
What did he write, Cleves? He wrote something. One of the most important figures in the British film industry. He directed the film. He directed Whistle Down the Wind, Seance on a Wet Afternoon, League of Gentlemen, the proper League of Gentlemen.
League of Gentlemen, yeah.
He was married to Annette Newman.
He was married to Annette Newman. Fair play to him. So, very interesting guy. Obviously acted, but then turned into...
he's Emma Forbes' dad.
Oh, is he really?
Oh, wow, of course he's Emma Forbes' dad.
That's really weird.
I think we should point out for any of our foreign listeners that Emma Forbes was a one-time Saturday morning kids TV presenter and daughter of well-known British actress Annette Newman as well. And obviously the daughter of Brian Forbes as well. Wow.
And he was in the army with Roger Moore.
Wow.
Was he really?
Cool.
So, he did loads of stuff. He was the head of EMI Films. He wrote loads of stuff, produced loads of stuff. Yeah, so a very talented guy. He's there. They find a whole one of the meteorites. He digs it up and then it goes off, poof, in his face. So you cut away
like a
to
space
Brian.
puffball.
Yes, you cut away to Brian Donlevy going, Marsh, what's that on your face? For a minute, I thought I could see a black bubble. And then it cuts back to Brian.
Can't afford.
In the meantime, someone has come and applied some of the wax stuff to his face that you use to make cuts with in the theatre. So then you see, I mean, for me, that's the only weak part of this entire film is the makeup effects are absolutely, some of the effects are brilliant, which we'll come to, but some of the makeup effects aren't very good at all.
No. But so my notes were this were, he's like, mate, don't just pick up mysterious alien rocks. I've seen Chernobyl. I know how deals go down.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, last time, what's all this mysterious looking rock? Oh, no, it never ends well.
That's another Prometheus mistake there, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
But it allows
as
you
a scientist.
But it does give you that mark, like in Invaders from Mars, when they get the mark on the back of their neck.
Yeah.
This is a thing where the viewer can then identify who is a
baddie.
Who's been turned.
Yeah. So then these soldiers turn up in a Land Rover. And then there's a bit of casual brutality, which this film is quite good at casual brutality.
Some brilliant stuff later on.
Where Quatermass tries to reason with them and they just hit him in the face with a rifle, which I think is very, very un-British. And also the accent of the guy sounds a bit like Eastern European, and you think that they don't sound British. they're to all intents and purposes, they're acting like an invading army, aren't they, at this point?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the point being that you're in Britain and you can't understand what's happening because the British people wouldn't act like this. They wouldn't do things like this to each other. And then he just hits him in the face, even though obviously he's not British. He's American in this film. God, we've only got about 10 minutes into this film, haven't we?
We've got lots of...
We're halfway through
lots of themes.
First page of 5 pages of notes. So
oh, God.
Wow.
We need to go a bit quicker. There's just so much plot, though, isn't there?
To talk about,
Well, so Quatermass goes to the new town looking for the police.
Well, he escapes, doesn't he?
Yes.
He kind of flees the bastards.
Go now.
Yes. And then he turns up in the new town, and the most remarkable thing there is he goes, "Where's the police?" And they're like, "There's no police here.
We don't need police."
And then he's like, "Well, who's in charge?" And then he's kind of pointed towards a church hall, and basically I've written it in capital letters, West Drive. I thought, you don't see West Drives anymore. I can remember from being in the Cubs as a kid that West Drives are a thing. And I thought, you just don't see a West Drive anymore.
So West
is
a card game, isn't it?
It is a card game, yes. I don't know if money's involved in some way, is it?
Matchsticks normally.
You play for money? Yes. So he goes in there. So this is quintessential like English kind of middle management, isn't it? So there's a guy in there, he's faffing around. It's Roger Lloyd-Pack's father, incidentally.
Yes. As mentioned
Charles
last week.
Lloyd-Pack, and he is the kind of jumped up little shit that Captain Mannering kind of figure who's like, you're asking a lot of questions.
I've put amazing keep your nose out of it vibes just from everybody. Because the one poster that they've got up, we learn, obviously, it's the aliens that are doing this, but it says, talk about your job, lose it.
Yeah.
In that kind of post-war government information. And I thought, oh, wow, that's sort of something like the Conservatives would like now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Don't talk about how much any rights that you've got at work. You should be lucky you've got a job. Shut up and get on with it.
Yeah, this is
that kind of vibe, isn't there?
One of the
loose lips, sink ships.
Yeah, the pretext of this film again is just it's so on the money for now. It's nuts, really.
Shut up and work, peasants.
Because they say, the guards have dealt with him, and then someone else says he shouldn't have gone there, and it's like this is very now. It's like, oh, that woman was murdered. Oh, well, she shouldn't have walked down that street in the dark. And it's like, what are you talking about? The man shouldn't have murdered her. It's that insane kind of mentality, isn't it? Where something bad happens to you and then someone will say, you went down there. Yeah, you went down there on your own. It's your fault. You're stupid enough to go down there. Like, there's always going to be murderers around. So I found all that thing of this kind of paranoia at the start of this film very effective. They say that the police won't touch it. And then I think we cut back then. He
goes off to the police station then, doesn't he?
Yes. In the meantime, do we find out that the meteorite is a container and is hollow and has had something in it, which obviously comes out when the meteorite lands.
And it looks like a missile. It's aerodynamic, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's basically put together by an intelligence. It's not just a kind of random thing that's happening.
Quatermass decides, right, I'm going to get to the bottom of all this. I'm going to go back to Westminster and I'll start asking some questions. And then he starts having a series of meetings with different politicians who go, I can't tell you that. We can't discuss that, Quatermass. And I've written, the enemy of this film is really the Official Secrets Act. No one can say anything to him.
All right, no one can see. So hands up who has signed the Official Secrets Act.
Whoa,
really? Why?
Have you?
Yeah. Well, I can't say, can I?
In what context? In what context?
I had to sign it when I was on work experience once.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
I can't say.
I can't say. It's very mundane, John. It's very mundane.
How weird. Not the RNLI.
No. Yeah. It's just a secret conspiracy to get as many foreigners into the country as possible.
So he drives into London and you see the kind of seat of Parliament and kind of rationality and all this stuff. But then you hear the kind of music, and he sees some kind of trucks going by.
That's right.
With the machinery on, and they've got the kind of
the
fascist
logo
symbol on them.
The symbol, yeah.
Which is the logo of evil.
Is that your tattoo, John?
Yeah, I'd love a tattoo of that. That would be amazing. Imagine that. When you say next tattoo, I have no tattoos. So he goes to see his mate, Inspector Lomax. I don't know if you two would have realised this without seeing the first film.
So, John, I've seen Quatermass and the Pit. Is that the third one?
That's after this one, yeah. Okay. So the first film, Quatermass Experiment, which is no E in front of X.
Like Extra.
Yes. Has Jack Warner in it, who was Dixon and Doc Green, and he is the same police inspector, Lomax, but doesn't come back for this film. So you've got a bit of a looky-likey, actually. He's quite a good lookalike. So he calls in on his own mate and basically turns up and says, mate,
something's
everything... Yeah, something's up here. Like, I've been to this place, and this guy's been infected, and there's these meteorites, and then I got hit in the face with a rifle, and the other guy's just like, oh, whoa, this is a bit But
if
heavy.
You think, like, this happened now, you could WhatsApp someone or text someone to say this is happening. Like, then you go, right, I'm going to have to drive 4 hours. Now, we'll probably have taken 5 hours, 5 or 6 hours.
More on that later, Ross. When we get to our summing up, my whole kind of like, if you did this now.
Yeah.
Because I still think it's something that's really ripe to be done. So, yes, carry on.
This, I'd love to see this remade. So then what I really like then is that he is then put in touch with this MP Broadhead, who it turns out to be, quite ironically and humorously, this obviously a kind of pastiche of the idea of a Northern Labour MP at the time. But so is he called Vinnie Broadhead? So he refers to himself in the third person all the time, doesn't he? They're not going to pull the bottom of this. Yeah, they're not going to pull the wool over Vinnie Broadhead's eyes and all this kind of thing. So he talks about, they had tin huts there. They spent millions of pounds, insane costs. So he's a brilliant character, and I think he almost steals the film because of what happens to him in a very few moments. So this is what, and I really like this idea, is that basically Broadhead himself has looked into this.
Yes.
And his kind of realization that what is being marketed as a synthetic food substitute, there is actually no distribution network for this food substitute.
See,
and I just think that it's just such a mundane thing, isn't it? It's like...
See, this is the government's handling of PPI, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like
who's in charge of this exactly? Who's got this gig and how comes they've got it?
Yeah,
exactly. Something's very fishy here. But yes, what Broadhead then says is, well, I'm going to go and have a look at this for myself. Do you want to come with me? Or let's see if we can get you to come with me. And then with that, AN kind of stooge turns up, doesn't he? And says, oh, you want to come with it? And, he's obviously been turned by the aliens as well. And it's amazing. Like, first of all, he goes, what's your name? And he goes, Quatermass. He literally says it like that. It really made me laugh out loud.
Yeah.
Quatermass.
Yeah.
Quatermass. And then the other guy
just goes to hear him.
He just kind of like smiles and nods. I realise, with the podcast, people can't see me, but I just think that, yes. And then he's
I've heard of you.
Yeah, you can come along. And so,
it's a good scene.
And then, the game is afoot. They're going to go back there, check it out, and find out what's going on with this.
But if you figure, how many miles have they covered?
Yeah, well, he's just done 90 miles to get to London. Now he's got to go. This 90 miles is mentioned a lot, isn't it? Where is it? It's about 90 miles away.
But I was thinking, because they all get in the car. There's a lady there in her hat and gloves and stuff.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, it'd be really uncomfortable. What would be what was the speed limit back then, John? Would it have been?
There wasn't a speed limit until the late 50s, but I doubt those cars would be able to go very fast because of the state of the roads, probably.
Yeah, it just would have been a horrible journey. The amount of people in that car.
Well, I love that you're questioning this, Cleves. A film about the end of civilization and the Earth turned into a colony for ammonia-eating... Yes,
aliens.
Gestalt aliens.
And I'm worried at car sickness.
But what I like about that scene is that it's kind of banality. Is it the banality of evil? And that's a bit like the Nazis with this, where you've got this idea that it's all just to do with process and kind of just someone at the end of the day has got to be the one that presses the button that kills everyone. But it's all these kind of faceless middlemen and kind of pen pushers and the thing that Broadhead has kind of hit upon, the fact that there's no distribution, is this the kind of really mundane way of finding out about an alien invasion. And you've got you've had the thing recently to do with shortages of petrol, and it's like modern life is just teeters on the edge of chaos because
constantly
a few drivers have retired. And it's like, suddenly, it's like, it's on the news that a few petrol stations have run out of fuel, and then everyone goes
chaos.
Mad.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this film is about. It's about all these kind of ideas where...
the amount of petrol could be in all the cars at one time is like double the amount could be in the petrol station. So if everyone just fills up, it will empty them.
Yeah.
So it's always the case, even if they were full.
Yeah.
It's just mental.
Yeah. The just-in-time, it's all to do with this just-in-time idea now, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So they go to the plant, which gave me sort of Doctor Who Inferno vibes. It did. I expected like a reverse evolved man to sort of appear green and furry.
But they turn up at the gates and they go, "We're here to have a look around," and the guard goes, "Yes, in you go." And Broadhead goes, "Well, nothing sinister so far." And I thought, you've literally just turned up. It's like, well, of course. You've been there for 30 seconds. What were you expecting, man?
Yes.
So, and then they start to have their tour around the quasi-moon base plant, don't they?
Which is a Shell oil refinery, and who they thank at the end of the film for letting them film there, don't they?
That's when Shell were fine and they weren't,
dicks.
Destroying Africa just to keep making fucking oil. So at this point, Quatermass nips off to have a look in the medical centre because he's there on the pretense of looking for his pal.
But he is acting like a drunk, though, as well as he. Where he's just sort of like, I'm going to go through it.
Humbling up.
Yeah, because I feel did that actually just happen? They thought, fuck, we're going to have to go with it.
In his Mac.
Yeah. His ill-fitting Mac. So what can we just say? I really thought that he was the worst part of this film. I thought that he didn't look like a genius or a rocket scientist. He just looked confused.
Or an enigma.
Yeah, his clothes didn't fit him properly. He didn't look like he knew what was going on. His eyes were darting from one side to the other. He always looked sweaty. I can see why Nigel Kneale thought he was not Quatermass.
I have to admit that I'm always slightly charmed by him in that he's totally wrong for both films, but there's something about him which is quite likable and kind of like totally, he just seems bemused by everything, which kind of makes it more believable because he's playing it so straight that there is because he's just drunk, isn't he? So he's just like literally like, what's that over there?
And in a bit, there's kind of like one of the famous scenes we're building up to now.
Yes.
What I put is that when this happens, I looked across at Quatermass. He looks entirely unmoved by what's happening in front of him. He's like, whatever. It's not like, Jesus, he doesn't throw his hands up or anything like that. He just kind of goes.
For being the titular hero, he does fuck all. Doesn't he? Yeah, like you wouldn't.
Well, he's got the idea, which is the kind of payoff at the end of the film, isn't it? So he organises that.
So you wouldn't get a 58-year-old, roughly, man who looks like that to be the titular hero of a science fiction extravaganza nowadays, would you?
No, and that's why I'm glad that he exists, because I'd rather watch him than someone like Brad Pitt in World War Z, like that pile of shit film. Like, this guy is much more believable because he's just like a drunk buffoon. And I think, good on him. But So they go into the medical bay. They say they're part of the inspection party. And they're just met with like really antisocial men, aren't they? They're really the people that greet them always set my teeth on edge because they're just so rude. And I think that's quite deliberately un-British as well, because they don't say good afternoon or anything like that. It's just, it's just like, no, there's no one here. Yeah. And then the guy, I can't think of the guy's name, but he's Jonathan Harker in Dracula, and he's terrible in Dracula, and I think he's really good in this. So the guy, the smarmy guy who is the company man, he finds them again, and he's like, you can't keep walking off, keep coming, we've got to, schedule
the agreed route.
Yes, all this kind of thing. And then, so they go, there's this sense of like they're being delivered though, isn't there? As time goes on, they kind of go into the kind of lair of the beast kind of thing.
Yes. Even though all the people working on this plant have been taken over by aliens, they still wolf whistle a woman.
Yes, only some of them, Cleves. Not all of them. The people from the village, i.e.
the workers.
The unturned.
Yeah. They haven't been. And that's the part that...
Oh, okay.
When you see them come to the base later in what's obviously the echo of like the villagers attacking Frankenstein's castle, that kind of vibe. It's obvious that you have the ones that are like the chosen ones, and then you have the normal humans, and that's in a lot of Nigel Kneale's work as well, where it's people just against other people. The alien part is actually like quite academic. It's actually just about how nasty humans are to each other. And I think that's a part you have in this. Yeah, because they wolf whistle at a woman at this point, don't they? Yeah. And Broadhead goes, there's nothing wrong with them fellas.
And Broadhead then says, I want to go and have a look inside one of these tanks, which, they're on the tour. They're like, oh, no. Don't look inside there. Don't go in there. And before they know it, he's snuck off. And then they're like, oh, we've got to go and find him.
Yeah. And
then all of a sudden, he emerges from one of the tanks.
Yeah.
In what is probably like the most horror scene of the film. Covered in this black goo. And he goes, don't touch me! Don't touch me! Like Richard Pryor when he caught himself on fire free-bracing cocaine. Don't touch me! I'm going there! And he sort of runs around for a bit, doesn't he? And as I put down here, Quatermass is strangely unmoved by this.
He does a great sort of surfing down the stairs, the sort of thing you do when you're sort of a little bit drunk and you sort of go down a couple of steps.
This scene, I think, is one of the best scenes in all horror. For horror, because it is so horrifying that this guy thinks it's food in there. He goes in
like Augusta Scoop.
Yeah. So you have the semi-comedic thing of Quatermass going broadhead with different echoes on it, and then you have the kind of reveal of the guy, like you say, coming down the stairs. He's covered in it looks like black treacle or something, isn't it? Yeah. But what he thinks is food, it basically the reveal is that this is food and it burns, and it's like, whoa, that's really fucking dark. Yeah. He's fallen in this stuff and it's burning him to death, and he just
it's made him blind. He can't see.
It's made him blind. It's so intensely horrific.
Oh, someone was telling me a story the other day about the original Friday the 13th that there's a bit where someone has like a fake arrow put through their head, and they made their own fake blood, and they used film developing fluid as one of the components in the fake blood. So when they poured it all over the guy's eye, he went blind for a month. And
my God!
They didn't know if he was going to regain his sight.
Oh my God! Yeah. Horrendous. So yeah, I think one of the key things, certainly in British horror. I just think it's amazing because it's very modern kind of horror. When you look at all the stuff that Hammer churned out then for the next 20 years after this, it's all like Victoriana.
Yes.
It's all like period set. It's stake through the heart and it's garlic and all this. But this is the horror of modernity. This is like, this is what we're being told is something that's going to save us, and actually it's something that's burnt him to death.
Yeah.
And it's just like I always think that Quatermass at this point with his reaction is almost like a scientist, and he's trying to question what's actually happening to the guy, and he's kind of aloof to the pain that he's in. I just find the whole scene like really traumatizing.
So if Hammer had made this a few years later, that they probably would have cast Cushing or Lee in this. Who would you think would have been given the part of Quatermass?
Cushing.
Peter Cushing, almost certainly, because I think he was meant to play him on TV. For some reason couldn't play him on TV. And then I think he was meant to play him again in Quatermass in the Pit, and couldn't do it. And it's...
It's because his wife got ill.
Oh, really? No, really?
Yeah, I believe so.
And it was Andre Morel replaced him, who is very good as well. So, yeah, I think for that scene alone, brilliant, 10 out of 10. And then, so he escapes from there. He doesn't run it. We're not going to go into the detail because we're going through this film very forensically. It's because there's so much happening. If you listen to Extra, we're like, nothing happens. We skip through this bit. There was a 20-minute conversation here about how they used to be husband and wife, and then
it revealed nothing.
It revealed literally
apart
nothing.
From the girl from Bond's boobs.
Yeah. So he heads back to see Inspector Lomax, and then Inspector Lomax reveals that the front page of the paper is news that Broadhead has become like a trade envoy and has left the country. And that obviously is a super twist that then you're like, all of the government. Media. Yeah, they've got the media. They've got the government.
And there was some point where he went to go to his superior to report this, and he noticed the superior had the scar on his hand, so he knows that the police are in on it as well.
Yeah, so Quatermass says, go to the commissioner. He goes to the commissioner, who looks a bit like William Hartnell, and then as he sits down and he starts to tell the story, he looks at his hand, and he's got the big mark on his hand. So I think all that is really brilliant.
I've got to say that while you've been talking about this, I've increased my score because you're making it better than my original.
Does this happen every time, Cleves?
Often, but not always.
I said to Hell earlier, James will have liked this, and Ross won't like it because it's not like something he watched when he was 15, which has got like loads of jelly on boobs.
That's so true.
I only like horrors where there's like jelly on boobs and blood. Like, women are covered in blood.
Reminded me of being scared when I was 15.
There's a lot of extrapolation then where Sidney James is introduced.
Yes, at last.
which is very bizarre.
It's a drunk reporter.
A drunk reporter who seems to be doing an American accent at one point.
At some point.
I don't really understand what his accent's meant to be. Yeah.
Well, I wondered if it was because, of course, he is from South Africa. He's South African.
Oh, yeah.
And I wondered if it was at this point he was still kind of like quite new to the country.
Yeah, maybe.
So he hadn't quite settled into
Although
the carry
he
on.
always looked 86.
Yeah, governor. Kind of role. But I thought it was weird because this is the only straight performance I've ever seen him do.
Yes.
I'd only ever seen him in Carry On or Bless This House or something.
Yeah. I've seen a few films now where he's straight acting in on Talking Pictures, and they're really interesting, actually.
I saw him in a boxing film once, I think.
Oh, yeah, he's good. I think I've seen that, and he's good in that. But there's another one that's something to do with like a market stall. Like I love, in the past, they do an entire film about a market stall.
Yeah. I'm trying to say that's very post-war austerity.
Yeah.
They would have done a Children's Film Foundation film about that.
But so him, Lomax, and Sidney James then decide to go back again.
Yeah.
And I think this is where the kind of pacing of the film is a bit dodgy because obviously it's.
But films used to do. I think it's all to do with them adapting a TV script.
It's TV episodes that are concertinaed down from like 6 episodes or whatever.
Because they would back then they would have had like 12 sets or 6 sets, and they would have had to go backwards and forwards.
I can't remember if I've watched the TV version. It's a long time ago, and I think only a few episodes exist. But it is a case of where it's very much done like a sitcom, where they've got 4 sets next to each other, and they basically cut from set to set between scenes with different actors. And then there's a few there's a few film inserts of like Winterton Downs or Winnerden Downs or whatever the fuck it's called. They then go back to the church hall, and there's a dance happening, which is very well, it's not very rock and roll or 50s, really, is it? It's like a kind of wall.
Christ, do we need rock and roll sharpish in this country? It's really low. And they're all kind of like doing like it's almost like sort of country dancing, isn't it? It's very weird.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
It's the woman who goes onto the poster, basically, isn't it? Like
Vera Day, yes. Yeah. The Vera Day, for listeners, is a kind of proto Barbara Windsor, who I don't think went on to much fame, but was a very similar genre. So she's very petite, blonde, kind of sparky, chopsy woman in this film, but she's only in it for like 3 scenes, bless her.
Yeah. She was in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, apparently.
You're joking.
Really? Wow.
She's still alive.
I think so, yeah.
Wow.
There's no date of death on her IMDb.
Wait, what year was she born, please?
1935.
Wow. That's nuts, isn't it? So yeah, they go into the hall. There's all of this is a really good scene here because it's extrapolation and it's doubts of are we mad doing this? Can this be believable from the protagonists? They go in and the people that are in the hall are like, why are you here? You're endangering our jobs. And then you've got the revelation that all the overtime has been cut and all the zombies have taken over the jobs in the a
great
plant.
Example of someone actually referring to someone as a zombie in a film.
Yes.
Where if it was a zombie film, they would go out of their way not to refer to them as a zombie in any way.
Yes. So that's really interesting. And then what happens is that they try and there's a bit of a kerfuffle. And at this point, one of the meteorites comes through the ceiling to speed up the explanation of this. Vera Day is kind of infected by this thing.
Yes.
Enrages all the men.
Yeah, all the men are very enraged. The boyfriend is enraged. At this point, Sidney James is trying to ring through to his paper to explain what's happening.
Suddenly sobers up. Yeah.
Suddenly sobered up and sounds British again. But then Quatermass and the inspector are outside looking at this point saying, why is he doing this? Then the guys in the wagon turn up with the
metal detector.
Metal detector.
And their bat helmets.
Going around to try and find it.
I do think that if we ever go to like a horror convention or like a Talking Pictures live thing, we should dress up as the soldiers from. Yeah,
you've always got an eye on cosplay, Ross. The amount of ones we've done where you go, oh, if ever we do this as a convention, I'm going to turn up dressed like this. I'm going to dress like that.
Their helmets are too small for all of their heads.
Very strange. Yeah.
So they basically look like half a coconut on their head and then a gas mask. So they turn up. They are quite threatening though, and the gas masks obviously have got this kind of dehumanizing feel. Yep. So then they go in. Sidney James, and I'd forgotten all this part. Sidney James is on the phone. Then one of them turns around, nudges the others. They all turn around. They machine gun him.
They just decide that's
absolutely brutal.
It does feel. I don't like seeing guns in British things.
Well, but bearing in mind that earlier, they just beat Quatermass up a bit.
Yeah.
But they've upped the stakes, haven't they? Now it's like, well, he's on the phone to an editor. Kill him.
They go, hang on. Is his name? Is he the titular character? Well, we don't kill him, but we'll kill everyone else.
Yeah. So I was astonished at that, like how brutal that is in any kind of film like this, where you see, you see death in horror film all the time. But the guy that's just there, he's been introduced as quite, a kind of comedic character. They literally just like exterminate him there and then, don't they?
Yeah.
And there's a shot of him being shot. It cuts back to them. Then they fire again, and it cuts back to him, kind of just like going down behind the bar where he's been bringing really, really brutal, very almost shocked. I wasn't shocked because I've seen it before, but it did make me think, bloody hell, that's a bit much for any kind of British film in the 1950s. To show someone being murdered in that way was really surprising, actually. Michael Ripper's introduced in that scene as well, which for all Hammer fans, Michael Ripper is in virtually every Hammer film as like the bartender, the policeman, the gravedigger.
I thought I recognised him, yeah.
Etc., etc., etc. He's a legend. I wish he was still alive. We could have him on the podcast. It'd be amazing. He is dead.
But then I just refer to films he hasn't been in and to piss him off, like we did with Paul Kneale.
Oh, God. Let's not go there again. But then, long story, kind of cutting to the chase a little, the people of the town decide we're not going to put up with this anymore. Let's go and storm the base. Yeah. And one of my favourite bits is that, the police inspector, whoever's with them, right? They run into him and they kind of organised themselves into a mob. Yeah. And they've already got clubs and things like that. And the policeman goes, the best bit is he says, you men, go home. You can't do anything. And I've written down, they're a massive mob. They're exactly the sort of people that can do something. It's there's loads of them. If you just rush anything, you'll get stuff done, guys. Don't worry about it.
He's got a car. We can use it.
Use the car. I was quite surprised at this point by how epic this sequence felt, because there's a lot more extras than you'd expect in a Hammer film in the 1950s, isn't there? There's
correct.
Usually there'd be about 10 men all just going, woo, but there's a good 100, 150 here easily.
When they end up storming the gate, they very quickly decide, I'm going to take a gun and start shooting people. And it's from getting a little bit of fisticuffs to actually killing people.
Just killing. He's enraged. You don't break up our whisk drive. I don't expect consequences in this country. But no, the big thing, what I thought as I was watching it, I thought, oh man, all of these guys are extremely kind of weapon proficient. But then I suddenly realised, this is 1956. Most of them were involved in World War II.
Exactly, James. They've all been in the war.
Or had done national service.
Yeah.
Actually, that's legit.
I can imagine joining a mob, but if someone's fired a gun, I'd be out of there.
I'll clean that. If you were in a mob, you would fill your pants in the first 10 minutes, please. You just couldn't handle it.
We build towards the denouement. So now we have the enraged British worker, the British working man, and Quatermass and the cops versus the alien invasion.
Quatermass in disguise after running over a Robo-Man.
That was weird.
That was the best bit in it.
In his ill-fitting outfit at this point, isn't he, Brian?
That reminded me of The Earth Dies Screaming.
It looks like he ran over a real person that time rather than a model.
It actually looks quite realistic.
but doesn't care. Just starts taking his clothes off.
Just gets his clothes off. Well, he's been zombified, isn't he? But what you find out at the end is that the zombies can be cured.
So the zombies are killed.
Yeah.
You can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs. And remember, he was very passé, as we learned from in the first movie, about his entire astronaut team dying. Oh well. You got to expect some bumps on the road.
Yeah, those bumps are Robo-Men.
Brian Donlevy is in there already. As we've said, dressed up with his coconut hat on and his gas mask. So he's in the room where they're putting the gas into the big gas domes.
Yes.
Opens up and he sees the creatures in there. And I do find this, again, absolutely terrifying and really
it's like the skin of evil, doesn't it?
Viscerally horrific.
Yeah.
I don't know why it works, because it's obvious that it's just a man covered in a latex
blanket.
But it does work for the 1950s. It's good.
The sound effects, the music, the kind of, I think it's kind of slowed down, and the kind of whole thing works really well. And it looks really, really horribly horrific. Like a kind of, have you ever seen a sheep's stomach or a cow's stomach lining?
Yeah.
It's like that kind of thing, isn't it? It's like horrible organic.
I just love the way you're disturbed by an old black and white 1950s film, but you see someone flay to death and hellraiser and you think it's shit.
It just looks shit,
it looked poor.
It just looked rubbish. There is a kind of economy of horror in this, which makes the horror work. Whereas with Hellraiser, it's just like
non-stop.
It's what pervy gothic fat people find kinky, and that doesn't do anything for me.
I have lost a bit of weight, but
no, I'm talking about who we went to college with.
He wasn't fat. He was so skinny because he was a heroin addict.
You know what I mean? He was just like, he would probably watch Hellraiser again and again and again and be like, oh my God, it's like, it's so sexually transgressive and all this stuff. And it's like, no, it's just a perv's idea of what's kinky. And like a man with pins in his head is just stupid, really. Whereas this film is like, because the film is actually good and the context is good and the setting is good, it works. Whereas I think something like Hellraiser is just nonsense. Absolute rubbish.
Okay. So where do we get to?
It's the end. We're building up
storming
to the
base.
Yeah, so the alien, storming the base.
So they end up going into that room, don't they?
Oh, well, yes. And first of all, the aliens go,
come out. If you come out, nothing will show you what we're doing. Nothing bad will happen to you, I promise.
And then one of them goes, let's do it, in a very kind of British, I shall do whatever anyone in authority tells me to do.
I think as for a horror element, for me, that is the most horrific part, because I always imagine that if I was in any situation like this, some end of the world situation, that I would be stuck with a load of idiots who would not listen to me.
Reason.
Yeah, who would be like trying to do the absolute opposite of what you would need to do to survive.
Yes.
It's like, there was that thing once where there was that terrorist group who took over they stormed a shopping mall. Some mother got her 2 children to pretend to be dead for like 12 hours so that they wouldn't get shot by, is it Boko Haram or something like that? I know if I was stuck in any situation with my own children, they would fuck me over. No, they would not stay. They would not be able to stay still or not.
They wouldn't last 10 minutes.
No, they wouldn't. The two worst things would be if I was in any kind of, extreme situation. Would be like, be stuck somewhere with my own children because they would be an absolute liability, and I would have to stop for them.
Get off that banister!
Or be stuck with any of the public, or my wife, because we would always argue about what we was going to do. We was watching the Tom Cruise War of the Worlds the other day, and I said we wouldn't last 5 seconds because we would. As soon as that happened, we would both have completely conflicting ideas of what we was going to do, and we would stand there arguing for half an hour, and then we would get disintegrated. That'd be it. So that part, when they were stuck in that room, and there was a difference of opinion, it was like, that would be my worst situation, because I know people wouldn't listen to me, and I would not be able to put my argument across properly, and I would just get frustrated.
I think that scene could be a play in itself, couldn't it? Where they all debate what they're going to do. Yeah. And some will want to leave, some want to stay. Just before that bit, what I liked is as they're coming into the base, you finally hear the person on the tannoy is just going, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. Which I was just like, again, it's this British thing turned on its head where it's like, we're all very ordered, we're all very orderly.
But there's a point in there which I could... where the voice over the tannoy was saying something, then it kind of... Was he talking in a dumber language? Or was
I think there was 2 voices, wasn't there? It's like they were talking in tongues.
Because it was over that, because I felt like he was talking to someone off mic, but I just couldn't work out what was going on there.
No, I couldn't, but I think I think it was just to show confusion and kind of they're losing it a bit at that point, aren't they?
So Quatermass was basically pushes more oxygen into the big domes and turns the ammonia down to try and slowly poison the organisms which are inside there.
Because they can't live in Earth's atmosphere, can they? That's the point of this film, Cleves.
Exactly. But as in the stone tape, where there's a big room saying supplies. There's a
US
big,
Army.
Yeah, there was a big cupboard saying emergency weapons or something. Isn't there? Where they have to get the policemen to help them give that.
What a character does say, they were ready for any situation or something. Yeah. So it's just kind of make you think, bloody hell, what were they planning? They were defending this to the death kind of thing.
But why use English to mark their cupboard?
Well,
Yeah.
That's a very good point, Cleves.
Yeah. But then there's anti-tank guns in there, which is great.
Yes.
Yeah, I love an anti-tank gun. In the meantime, we cut back to the base where Brand has been priming the rocket, getting the atomic rocket ready to go. And then Marsh comes back to stop him from firing the rocket at the alien base, which is on an asteroid that we found out about. And then they machine gun Brand as well as he lets the rocket go. And I was astonished at that part as well. And then you've got this long scene where he drags himself across the floor to press down a plunger. Yeah, right, that was nuts, wasn't it?
On the River Kwai style.
Yeah. Again, it's this very kind of nihilistic, kind of unglorious death for him, where he's the hero of the film, really, in lots of ways. He's just dead on the floor.
Just caught an orb then, John. I saw my first.
I know, I did see an orb. I have seen an orb. So I've written British Doubt, Rockets and Stuff.
John Pountney's third collection of diaries.
Biography.
The Idiot Men, who include Charles Lloyd Pack and a few others, a Scottish man who's very old, who seems too old to be working as a like builder or construction
to survive
worker.
this far through the gun riot.
They go outside, and then in another piece of insane horror for this film.
And a really lovely shot as well with the dome.
With the blood coming out.
Oh, right, yeah, no, the dome. I'm talking about the
when they walk towards the dome. Yeah. So they look out the window, they see the men walk towards the dome. Other men come and join them who don't have guns. But then you hear this awful scream.
Oh, yes.
Which comes down the pipe. And they're like, what's that scream? What's that scream? And then the pressure in the pipe has gone mad. A pipe cracks, and out of the pipe comes blood. And Quatermass says, they've blocked it with what? They've blocked it with what, mister? And Quatermass says, they've blocked it with human pulp. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, how horrific is that?
And how do you know? But yes, it's...
Well, because there's blood coming out of the thing. It's obvious what's happening.
Yeah.
So it's like, they've killed them, they've pulped them, and they've stuck them in the pipe.
To stop the oxygen coming in.
Yeah. It's like, again, like, so much, like, high-end horror in this film that is like, it's weird because I think it's a modern or contemporary setting. It seems a lot more horrific and shocking than the horror in just like, Freddy Krueger or whatever. It's like a kind of industrialized type of horror, and it's a bit, like coming after the war with concentration camps and all that kind of idea. It's like horror on this kind of industrial and kind of mechanized scale. And it's the fact that they've pushed men into machinery to try and
block it up,
block the pipe. It's really quite shocking for its time. It must have been really shocking for its time. And I'm astonished that went past the censor with him saying they blocked it with human pulp. Fire out the window, don't they?
Yeah, and they blow up the big dome
with the anti-tank gun,
which causes giant crap kaijin to come out. Which basically it is men covered in rubbery
bin bags.
Yeah. And there are bits where when they're walking around, you see it come up and almost see their feet underneath it.
No, you don't. They've got horrible feet, like big, horrible mushroom hooves. And they're walking around and they're like walking. These monsters are absolutely horrible. They're really disgusting.
6 stories high. This is the last thing I expected to happen at the end of this film. To have
me
giant Godzilla-sized monsters come out of this.
Yeah. I like that kind of ambition at the end of this film. That like this big egg dome breaks, doesn't it? And then these horrible, like. Because Quatermass describes them as lots of creatures that kind of stick together to make one big creature, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. And they just have this horrible slow motion thing, and they don't really seem to do anything, just stand swaying. They really could put the willies at me. I don't like them at all.
The rocket has already gone off, and the people before they thought that they were sending flares up.
Flares, that's right.
But at that point, the rocket finally gets their hidden orbiting base, which is in the dark side of the Earth, and blows it up.
Dark side of the Earth. I wrote that down.
That's our next album.
You couldn't have that now. You couldn't have the because of satellites and what have you. You wouldn't have the dark side of the Earth.
No, they blow that up,
lovely,
and that kills the massive Kaijin, and they drop down. The Robomen come out of their control,
come back to life. Yeah,
and
the scars disappear. Inspector Lomax says something about writing his final report, and Quatermass says, "How final can it be?"
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Well,
what do you mean? Is it over? How long before they're back again, Ross?
How long before they? And you've seen what happens, Cleves. There's more aliens. There's Martians in Quatermass in the pit, and then there's
but they're from billions of years ago.
Then there's Quatermass Conclusion.
Yeah, which I've started watching, which is brilliant.
It is very, very, very good, and it must have cost so much money because it was made by not Thames, Houston Films, which is like the film arm of like LWT or something like that. So it must have cost an absolute fortune to make because it looks like a feature film, doesn't it?
It's really good. I wish that we did that, but it's like 6 hours long. So it
is really long.
Yeah. But that's what we was originally going to be doing. But however, let's go back to Quatermass 2. We'll come back to Quatermass 4 later. What did we think?
I think it's the best thing we've watched.
Okay, so therefore it's going to be a 5 from you.
Fantastic. I think so, yeah. In terms of subtext, in terms of whatever the other text is. What's an unsubtext? The unsubtext.
It's text.
Text, just the text. Just everything about it. And I think even... I've had this film on DVD for about 20 years or something now when I worked in MVC, so we're talking a long time.
On the methods?
Yeah, on the method. I haven't...
Did they sell Spearhead from Space at MVC?
They might have sold it on VHS. I don't think they had it on DVD at that point.
It's on Blu-ray.
This was pre the Whovenation.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Of 2004, 2005. But just with COVID and the way the current government behaves in kind of saying one thing and then doing the total opposite, I just thought this film makes so much sense.
Absolutely.
You're talking about things being ahead of their time. But I think this is kind of timeless because it's like Britain always seems to have this thing of like not being able to trust whatever idiot wants to be in charge.
Yeah.
And, people say, we vote to put these people in charge. But it's like they always turn out to be twats, whoever they are. And it's like some dickhead always wants to be in charge.
Yeah.
And that's the point of this film, I think, really.
Well, who said that, if someone wants to be in charge, that is the last person you want to put in charge?
Yeah. And I think that's, that's this film down to a T. It's like every British government since this film was made really has been pretty much mediocre. And especially with... You have to look at New Labour and say, they did some very good things. But if you look at how the Labour Party have conducted themselves since this film was made, they've not been very good at getting into power. So if you're left wing, you're supporting people that really don't seem to actually want to do the job. And then the Tories who are doing the job are imbeciles and they're just filling their bank accounts. And that's, this film is all about that kind of mentality, isn't it? Where,
and that is a view from South Wales.
I thought I was talking to Nikki Campbell then on 5 Live. Nikki, I'm disgusted.
Can you turn your radio down for us?
Michael Foot was right.
I do have old recordings of John when he would refuse to turn the radio off when I was recording a podcast. John, I can hear the fan heater and the radio in the background. Please.
Where's this from?
When we started doing a Doctor Who podcast, you wouldn't turn them off. I'm listening to talk radio. What? I can't edit this if you got that in the background.
I have never listened to talk radio in my life. I only listen to 5 Live.
It's 5 Live.
Yeah, get it right.
All right.
James, what did you think?
Well, you are quite right, John. I did really enjoy it.
I knew it.
For the reasons outlined before. I also thought my big thing was, I thought, my God, I know it was designed to be a TV show, but I thought if you could remake this now, as John correctly says, this is also about today. And I thought so many of these themes would just work like gangbusters if you did them again now. The whole thing, like, what are the government up to? What's going on over there? And like, no, don't stick your nose into stuff. And, and then now, especially now, as I said, things have changed. So you have more of a natural distrust of government. You do it like that. And I just thought, and then, people going, don't trust him. He's a scientist, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Presenting the general public with, something's up here. Something's not right. And people are like, we don't trust you. You're a scientist. All right. And I thought, oh my God, you could so do this now. Really, and with a really even more sinister overtone. And feel to it. Yeah. So I really enjoyed it because of that. And as always with things like that, if you're watching it, it's making you, it's setting off the fireworks in your head and giving you ideas. That's really good. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's, as I said, for me, amazing. That was the best thing I ever saw is a 5. So it's an extremely solid 3 from me.
3, well done.
Very good. Just what you were saying then, James, it's like with Track and Trace, £32 billion.
Yes.
Where what has the money gone on? Where is the money?
I could have built that.
That is, exactly. Yeah. That is like,
and it's like, keep your nose out of it. Shut up. We're in charge.
Get on with your job, you little shit.
And I installed it. Never left my house. It started telling me I was being infected by people, and I haven't left my house, so I deleted it, and that's it.
Oh man, I'm gonna start writing.
£32 billion.
I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
It's like more than half the Ministry of Defence budget for a year or something was spent on that, and it's like there is literally nothing to show.
All they've done is build a massive underground base somewhere, haven't they? Where they
presumably, yes. Yeah. Presumably, yeah.
Well, okay. I originally gave this a 2, but I've given it a 3 now.
He's gone up. He's seen the error in his face.
Well, just talking about it made it more fun. I just didn't like the guy playing Quatermass.
There was no titties and jelly.
No, tittiesandjelly.com. I've started watching Quatermass 4 on Redbox, and I recommend you guys watch it.
Okay,
it's brilliant. It's really good. And
where have you got?
Is this the one with like the end of the world style cult, and it's all on Stonehenge? I've seen an article about it before in the past. I've never. I'm aware. Yeah.
John Mills is great. Yes. The production design is amazing. It's almost flawless, really.
Yeah, it's just like there's a bit in there where they pull up to go into the British Television Centre, and it's just like this sort of like post-apocalyptic sort of set they built just from the go through the gates. I think, God, the amount of money they spent just building that just to go into
hours.
It's really good.
Burnt out cars and it's brilliant. Yeah, it is really good.
So the thing that was what we was originally going to watch. That looks great, and I'm looking forward to watching more of that. I've seen Quatermass in the Pit, the TV version. I enjoyed, and I've also seen the live remake they made with David Tennant and Mark Gatiss.
I haven't seen that one.
Which is pretty good. I enjoyed this, but it was just a little bit. I didn't like the hero, and it was a bit dated for me. But yeah, I'd give it a 3 out of 5 because you guys have made me enjoy it more. So we're now doing something horrific. We recommend something which we've seen, read or listened to. Has anyone got anything this week?
Right. So I went on holiday to St Ives, and I bought a book which is called Cornish Horrors. Tales from the Land's End. I don't know if that's a Cornish accent or not, really.
Close enough.
What's he doing? Has he got it as well?
Oh, probably.
So continue.
I thought you got it as well then.
I've got the London one.
Oh, right. Is that the same lady?
Yeah. It's the same, from the same people. I got Into the London Fog, Eerie Tales from the Weird City. So
Joan Passy, is it?
The editor, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, this editor is Elizabeth Drearley, but it's the same.
Oh, that's interesting.
Same people. So they've done a London one. You've got the Cornish one.
Oh, I wonder if there's a South Wales one. That'd be good. So a lot of these aren't horrific or ghostly. There's a lot of gothic short stories in here, which are like, a woman in a tower with her sister's dead body and stuff. But then I read one last night, which is called The Haunted Spinney by Elliot O'Donnell from 1905. And this is very good indeed. It's very dreamlike. It's quite a weird little story. It's not very long, 10 pages, if that. I don't know really what it's about, but I think it's about a man who is watching himself as a madman doing murders in this haunted spinney. And I don't think he realizes he's watching himself as an out of body experience. So that's good. And then in the other one that I read, which was good, is called The Roll Call of the Reef by Arthur Quiller Couch, which was from... Oh, blimey, I don't think it says when this one is from. Probably around the same time, like 1900 or something. That one is about... it's quite hard to describe, but it's about some men that survive a shipwreck and become friends, but then one comes back as a ghost as the other one is dying. And it's to do with a lock, which has locked their trumpet and drum together because they were in the Navy. And it's a secret word that undoes this lock. So they were very good, very effective, very good ghost and horror stories. The rest of the book has been very good and very readable, but I wouldn't say it was particularly horrific or ghostly. It was mainly like gothic-y, kind of a bit Bram Stoker-y stuff. There is a Bram Stoker story in there, which isn't very good, actually.
I gotta say, the London one, I gave up on the first one because I felt like it was some kind of like comedy or parody or something which I didn't really understand because I wasn't Victorian.
Yes.
So I need to go back and give this another go.
Give it another go, please. Yeah. And I would suggest this one. I thought this is good, but like I said, it's not really horror as such. It's like that kind of weird Penny Dreadful kind of stuff from the 18th century, 19th century, which I presume is now out of copyright, and that's the reason why they're putting all these together, because it's over 100 years old, isn't it?
Yeah. James, what you got?
Okay, well, I've got from this. I was having a look on The Guardian, as one does, and every now and then they do kind of, in terms of their books segment, they have like top 10, and they get an author to say what is their top 10 in whatever subject it may be, like books about schools or books about time travel or things such as that. And straight away, I was intrigued by this one because it is top 10 urban legends in literature. And straight away, I was like, I'm interested. I want to. Yeah. And some of these are kind of authors that either A, we're very familiar with, or B, I'd read before. So like the 10 they give you is Clive Barker. Our friend says, okay. And then the Three Imposters by Arthur Machen, which is excellent. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, that's good. King Rat by China Miéville. And I like China Miéville. So I was like, okay. And then it came to an author and I was like, well, I've never even heard of this guy before, but he sounds fascinating. And so I looked into him. He's a guy called Joel Lane. And sadly, he's no longer with us. Joe Lane. Yeah, so sadly, he's no longer with us. He's passed away. But he was a writer who did sort of horror and kind of very off-kilter short stories. And they're all set in Birmingham. They're all set in the West Midlands.
No way.
Like, and as from, my genetic heritage is from there, I was like, well, now I'm intrigued. And so I looked into it, and I've got a copy of his book called Scar City, and it's a compilation of his short stories. And the first two were so good. When you're reading something good, and you think, I've not moved. I've just been absolutely sat bolt in my seat. It's so good. So that's what I've read this month, and I highly recommend him. It said, sadly, no longer with us. But yeah, Joel Lane. Really, really good. Yeah.
Okay. I've read a book. So it's all books this week.
I read
a book
very erudite then.
Yeah. A book called Whisper Down the Lane by a guy called Clay McLeod.
Okay.
And it's based around the Satanic Panic.
Cool.
In America in the 80s, where there was. I'm
interested. Yeah.
It was a whole sort of like almost like witch hunt sort of thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it cuts back and forwards between the 1980s, where it's the point of view of a boy who he's essentially he accuses a school teacher of abusing him. So he gets taken to because that's what he thinks his mum wants him to say for reasons in the book. And then he ends up going to a psychiatrist, and he gets into a point where he starts telling them what he thinks people want to hear, and so he gets it's transcripts of interviews with him and the police and him with the psychiatrist, and basically it just causes this whole satanic panic, basically, like that there's a satanic cult within the school, other children are being abused, all this kind of stuff, and it just gets out of hand, and to the point where the boy's like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. I'm on TV being interviewed and stuff, but I can't go back on it because this is all built up, and all I can do is just double down. So it's almost, it starts off like alternate chapters from
double
that.
Down, double down, double down.
Or you thinking of Chock-a-Block?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the way you said it made me think of Chock-a-Block.
And then it also goes to the modern day where this boy is now an adult. He's had his name changed and he's a teacher himself. And then things start happening at the school he's at. And it's like, so you go through phrases like, is there an actual satanic conspiracy going on, which he just tapped into? Is he doing it himself and he doesn't know he's doing it? Is someone else trying to punish him for what he did in the past? And it really affected me because, you know, it would be absolutely horrible to be caught on a lie you couldn't get out of. Also, if someone accused you of doing something and you knew 100% you didn't do it, but no one believed you, it's an absolute terrifying situation. And it's a book which, you know, I said to Beck, this book is really, really stressing me out, but I've got to keep reading it. So it's highly recommended. Thank you very much. I almost forgot that we was doing a podcast then. I just thought we was having a chat amongst friends. Yeah, so I thought, I've got to finish this. Thank you very much for listening. I just wanted to say thank you very much to everyone who's supporting us on Patreon. It's really, really helping because it does cost money to make this, and thank you very much for doing that, and thank you for continuing to support us.
It doesn't sound like it does, but it does cost money. And thank you for continuing to support us when we had our little bit of a hiatus. I appreciate that you carried on giving us £3 a month when there was a month when we didn't give you anything. So thank you very much for that.
Life gets in the way. Yeah.
Yes. So next fortnight, or whenever we get around to doing it next, we will be covering Ghostwatch with
Will we?
Best.
Interesting. Yeah, and I'll tell the story about Changing Rooms Gate.
Okay, fantastic.
Wow, awesome.
Okay. Well, until then,
love, light, and peace.
Happy day.
Stay safe, everyone. Be good.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to The General Witchfinders. Support the show and continue the conversation at patreon.com/General Witchfinders. Subscribe and spread the word at generalwitchfinders.com. Farewell, and don't have nightmares.
There we are. Very good. That's a long one, wasn't it?
We had a lot to say.
Very good. Very good. Lots of content there. There's extra content for the £3 they paid. But when did we last mention Spearhead from Space?
Oh, we've missed it for a little while, haven't we?
I think we've forgotten that, haven't we?
Yeah. All I do to my kids is like, stop, because they walk past the banister and they're like,
yeah.
like that.
Well,
you don't need to do that. Just
it'll come off the wall one day onto their heads.
Saying, that's over 100 years old. It's not very secure, and also if it breaks, I'm not going to be able to find another one of those.
Ross went into dad voice then.
Yeah.
Did you hear it?
Pinched.
Stressed.
Pinched and like a tight throat. That's over 100 years old.
It's old.
British Doubt, rockets and stuff. British Doubt, rockets and stuff. Human pulp. British Doubt, human pulp. Rockets, human pulp. Duff pulp. Duff pulp. Creeping around like a fucking creeping Jesus. Shoot to kill! Shoot to kill! Human pulp.